Hi there and welcome back to Japan, where recently Japanese metalers Baby Metal said that they were going to be disappearing for a while, and this hiatus made us think about what is in the future for them. Now, although this might just be preparation for the next phase of their existence and career, it did make us think what potentially could have caused it, is there anything that could come from it, and what really happens to an artist like this with such a specific remit at this point in their career. I mean, they are called Baby Metal after all. So in this video we're going to cover three major points. What we know about the hiatus, very importantly what we don't know about the hiatus, and then a little bit of a roundtable podcast conversation between me, Neon Reaper Gaming, and a very specifically big Baby Metal fan about what potentially would be in the future for them, and what we do actually think would be some really good theories should there be a change of format for Baby Metal in the future. That's point 3. So what do we actually know? Well, many of us know that their 10th anniversary recently came and went, and they used that period to release a very short announcement, again most of us would have read it, that basically said they were calling an end to the phase of their career which brought us their first 3 albums, and were going to disappear from the public eye for a short period of time. Now, I'm sure most of us would consider this to basically be a sign that they are prepping for the next phase, but it could mean anything. It wasn't a very detailed description, and they did kind of leave something in the end saying, who knows, only the Fox God. Now, what is a bit of an indicator is that BABYMETAL is releasing a book and also some merchandise, which according to people from our Discord is going towards raising funds for the band's future. Surprised they need funds considering how well they're doing, maybe something to do with Amuse. Nonetheless, I've got to say, that shows signs that there's confidence in more coming, but you can't really guarantee from that. It could just be him trying to push forward something when maybe the band do want to go in a different direction, but I think for now, like I say, most of us would consider there will be more Baby Metal in the future. So, the obvious question that comes next is, what do we not know? Now, obviously, there's going to be this point where a lot of the big hardcore fans are going to jump in and say they know what they expect from these girls, they know what these girls are like and what they'll do next, and you know what? You're probably right, and as a channel, we love this group, we've reviewed every one of their songs previously, followed them a lot as well, and I can't help but say that the fans are usually very loyal and very correct on this subject from what I've seen. However, I've said it before, and I'll say it again, one thing you can tell about the industry is knowing a band, even if you follow them religiously, is about as likely as knowing, or about as accurate as knowing a person just by following their public Facebook feed. You've got to remember, these groups basically, they have to put on a certain image and they're always presenting to the public what they want them to see. So you might well know them well and you might get a lot of truth from them, but you can't help but think that maybe a lot of it is presented, especially with a group like this who are so good at putting on a theatrical face to what they do. So as I say, we're hoping that they continue and we're hoping to do lots of great things, but this is an open-minded video where we want to talk about the possibilities, what might have happened, what could happen, what would be best, and surmising those various possibilities. So an interesting point to consider here is where they are in their career, and I would point out first of all that I kind of predicted when we were talking about Metal Galaxy before it came out basically what the style was going to be, and this is how I came to the conclusion it was going to be a high production collaborative album, and that was partly because their first album had dropped in, it had really been something unexpected. It had been that pop metal fusion that really put them on the map and kind of shocked a lot of people in a really good way. It was well written, but it was different, had a sort of a gimmick that actually was of high quality. However, just reproducing the same thing, they could have done that, but they decided not to, and I think that's what won over a lot of real hardcore music and metal fans, in that their second album was a really high production, well written album that explored so many various things, various styles of metal, and in such a well written way that in a funny, strange sense, it would have been very difficult for them to follow up with a third album of the exact same type. So they needed to explore that one space that they hadn't really been to yet, which was really high production and collaborative things that would pull them in different directions, pull them in inspirational directions that are away from the usual staff they worked with. And that's what we get with Metal Galaxy, an album that I thought was a brilliant way to cap off a trilogy of very different albums. Okay, it got mixed responses from a lot of the fans, but I tell you what, getting mixed responses just proves that you are doing something interesting. I mean, let's face it, look at all the great bands, Queen, the Beatles, they all have some pretty bad tracks in there because they were experimenting so far, and I've got to be honest, Baby Metal don't really have any particularly bad tracks. I've pointed out some that are not my favourites, that don't really work for me, but nothing which is totally hideous. So after having a debut album with viral qualities, a second album that really explored the lengths and breadths of writing available to metal and hard rock bands, and then a third album that went through all of the various things you can do with production skills and a little bit of collaboration, it's really hard to see where the group would go on a fourth album without somewhat retreading ground or maybe leaving the genre altogether, which they can't do due to their title. So I myself, although I felt very confident predicting the style of the third album, can't really see where they would go with a fourth album. Now, that's not to say they couldn't produce a really great album, or maybe excel beyond my simple expectations and do something unexpectedly original that completely defies anything that I could have predicted. However, like I say, if the group was to leave at this point and say, God forbid, we're going to break up and go and do other projects, I wouldn't really feel like they had exactly left us hanging. I wouldn't feel like they'd left us without something, or that we'd been left without something that we should have got. So in my opinion, this is a point where now they've grown to this age where they are no longer Baby, they are just Metal. If they did want to go off to do other things, I wouldn't feel particularly hard done by that. However, I would love them to surprise me with something very different and interesting. So this moves me on to the next part of our conversation, which is theories about where we want the band to go in the future. Now, obviously in the short term, we all want them to stay together and do more interesting things as Baby Metal. However, I had a conversation, as I mentioned earlier, with a very big fan of Baby Metal, and with Neon Reaper Gaming, who's been known for doing a lot of reviews of their music online as well, and has become a bit of an expert himself. This was a few months ago, way before they did the announcement, where we talked about what could be the future for the members if they were to break up, if they were to do other things, and what we would want that to look like. And you know what, whilst recording this video, I just thought that would be a very pertinent clip to come back to. So here's their responses when I asked them the question, what would you want them to do after they had stopped being Baby Metal, and when do you think that would be likely to occur?
They're going to be older girls, and this is always going to be the divide. This is always going to be the debate. The baby in the name is there for a reason, because you see these girls grow up, you see them do it, and that's. I feel like it's not a case of can't they do it, because I feel like they can. I feel like they can do anything what they choose to do, which direction they take it. I think the question to ask is, should they do it? At that point,
should they make something new? Should they make something new at a certain point?
A certain point, yeah, or like, aesthetic, because there's nothing stopping, like you say, like hypothetically, there's nothing stopping Sue from leaving Baby Metal ending, still doing metal, dressing in leather, like Floor or like Elise or something like that, and really taking that metal goddess persona, like front woman, to next sort of level. But in that next step is obviously gonna come personal growth as well. Her image is not gonna be Baby anymore. So yeah, like I said, it's not the case for me. It's not the case of they can't do it, because I believe they can. I think it's like I said, I definitely think the question should be should they do it,
or should they? I think it's a case of not should they do. Just to clarify, I think it's not a case of should they do music or should they do metal. It's should they reinvent at a certain point.
Reinvent, at a certain point, because like I said, the girls are still relatively old now. I still feel like we've got probably about 5, maybe 8 years. So we still got a long time, realistically.
That sounds realistic. I think
I feel like this is a debate for another time. So I still think we're going to get a good 5-8 years of.
I know it's a debate for another time, but I love to push these kind of questions forward. So with that considered, I'm just gonna ask Paul what he thinks, because obviously from your perspective, I mean, I know you're a fan of them as people primarily. So I mean, if they reinvented, I don't see that being an issue for someone who's a fan of the group as people. But I am intrigued. From our perspective on the outside, where would you imagine that they would be in 20 years' time? What would you expect, or maybe look forward to?
Yeah. So I kind of agree with where Leon is coming from. I think they're going to continue pretty much in their current format. If they keep with the Avengers or add a third member, but basically essentially in the current format for the next 5 years at least. So and 2 more albums and 2 cycles of shows and touring and things like that. So yeah, I think maybe 2-3 albums there over the next 5-8 years is realistic in the current format, based on their age, and that they can still keep doing it. But I think at a certain point in, I guess I'm going to be kind of biased here, in Suzuka's music career, she's someone who's like always going to want to do music. And when I guess Baby Metal comes to a point where it's kind of, I suppose, not really fit anymore, she may, I guess, break off it to a certain extent and be like a solo performer in a more traditional type metal band where she's the lead singer and she has, she has her musicians. I think it'll come to a certain point, hopefully, way in the future, that Sue becomes a kind of a solo artist or has her own band, as the vision of the future is less clear for Moa because of her role in Baby Metal. She might not stay the course as well as,
My hope.
Yeah, sorry, can I, before you go, can I just touch on that as well? Just going back to the conversation we had before about the perception of metal, I feel like this is another reason why them staying within the metal genre is so important, because I don't see Sue, as great as she is, if the band stays for another 5 years, I don't see Sue at the age of 30 or whatever the band finishes going off to be an idol at that age. I feel like she'd be too old.
She could still do pop in a kind of Luther-esque way. She could still be like Luther.
She could. She could, but the path forward there, or the ideal path, and the most logical path forward, would be to stay in the metal community and go forward as a lead singer.
I think she will. I think she will. I think even though Sue is so versatile and she could really do any style of music she wanted to, she could go to pop. But even though at the beginning of Baby Metal she didn't really know what metal was, I don't think she really understood metal in the beginning. She has developed a genuine kind of love for metal and this style of music. So
I really do see her becoming a lead singer of a band, forming a band maybe out of people she's known from Cami Band and various things. It would be my hope that if Moa was, the interest was there, that she did what Miku from Bandmate did, which was basically realise that she's part of a forming band but hasn't necessarily got a skill, so basically get someone to teach her guitar or something so that she could become like a core member, like a core member who plays the basic bits of the arrangement.
Absolutely.
That would be amazing if that could happen. Well, because she did play a bit of guitar before.
Studying.
Yeah, we heard.
Yeah, we do know that. Yeah, we do know that she's learning. We do know that she's studying music technology and stuff like that.
Halford.
But that's the thing. Like Moa could not necessarily move away from Baby Metal, but she could adapt into that. Like I'm kind of mentioned there that she plays guitar, so maybe you could see a situation where Moa doesn't move away from the band, but she adapts and changes into maybe like a different role. She could be almost like a guitarist in a band, like Miku is in Bandmate. So I could definitely see that changing. Yeah.
So in my opinion and conclusion, I've got to admit I'm not overly worried about the future of the band. I think they will keep on going. I think we will get a fourth album. I guess my concern is more that I hope that it's up to the standard of, shall we say, surprising innovation that we've heard from their previous albums. Yes, I would be happy with something that did things we've heard from them before, but one of the things I like most about them is the fact they're always breaking ground and always doing unexpected things whilst keeping the quality level so high. Now, I must say at the same time that I do think the fact that they've had this time during COVID and recently after coming off an album where they had done a lot of collaborations means that as women growing up and starting to find their own voices, they might well have found themselves wanting to do other projects. You might hear about side projects coming from either of them. I was really happy to hear about Moa doing the guitar learning that she was doing, which we heard in the Rob Halford performances, because I would really like to see her doing a little bit to bring her up from just being the backing dancer. I know since it's just her and Yui's gone, she's kind of taken on that role, and it's all great, but I feel like, I want to hear more of her voice as well, although Sue is obviously the de facto leader for clear reasons. So that also means that in the future, I'm not too worried about what happens after they continue being them or after they stop being them. And I do think there'll become a point when that's a decision that they want to make, and it'll be a good decision when it comes around. And I'm sure they'll make it at the right time. And I do believe that we might get new projects, new bands come from that, which will be in themselves very interesting and will really lead to a lot of great music. It's going to be hard when it happens for a lot of fans, I'm sure, but I think it'll be something that will be well managed and well prepared for. However, at this point, like I say, I think they're going to carry on their own form. I do hope that during the whole COVID period, they have found a little bit more of their own voices. And if they have a fourth album, maybe that'll be the innovation we hear. Maybe there'll be songs written more primarily by them, and we'll get to see a little bit more of their own personalities come through in the guises of the Baby Metal personalities that they've already created with the backstory that goes along with that. Who knows? There's so many things to throw into it, but one thing we can all guarantee is that we have some high quality musicians involved. They got great support from great people, and I do think that this is going to lead to some form of great music one way or another in the future. So anyway, as always, those are just my opinions, and we've had a few other opinions. Please don't take this video too seriously, because it's just us surmising and talking about the wonders of the future. You are more than welcome, however, to get in the comments and hopefully give us a nice discussion on what you think might happen, what maybe your concerns are, what your hopes for the future are, and definitely I'd like to hear what you guys think, as morbid as the subject may be, of what they'll do after they stop being a band, and maybe what you think the shock futures and the interesting innovations they can bring as Baby Metal will be in the future. But until I join you in the comments for those discussions, or in one of our social medias, feel free to follow them too. For now, press the like, hopefully subscribe, but one thing's for sure, ciao ciao.